All right. Some breaking news that we're covering right now here at Save Family Farming and Whatcom Family Farmers as well, the local affiliate of Save Family Farming. I'm Dillon Honcoop. I'm the communications director for Save Family Farming. Some information, some breaking news this afternoon. We've learned just in the past couple of hours about a troubling development that will have impacts far beyond Whatcom County. It's happened here locally, and I am broadcasting from Whatcom County right now, where floodwaters have inundated a major feed mill. And this means that the impact of this will be felt far and wide, far beyond Whatcom County. And that's why we're reporting on this evening. A lot of people don't know about this yet, but we are in a flood situation here in Whatcom County. Skagit County is facing major flood impacts, Snohomish County as well, other parts of western Washington. We've been hearing about problems in eastern Washington as well. And certainly farmers are working hard right now to protect their animals, to protect their farms, to protect their families. Lots of impacts, of course, beyond the farming world in local cities. And lots of people have been evacuated from homes flooded, lots of things going on. But this news, again, just in the last couple of hours here this afternoon about the EPL feed mill in Sumas, Washington, being inundated by floodwaters. That mill supplying feed to animals all over western Washington and beyond. I've been in the studio here a bit gathering some details, but I know someone who has been much more involved and informed than myself, and I'm going to bring him in to discuss here now. Fred Likkel, Executive Director of Whatcom Family Farmers. Fred, you've been working the phones all day on the impacts of this flood. First, we can talk more about what we know about the flooding and what's happening. But first, tell us what we know and what you heard starting this afternoon about what went on at EPL Feed and what this really means. Give us the high-level view.
Sure. Thanks, Dylan. Really appreciate it. Yes, I think one of the things that really caught us by surprise in this whole thing is that it didn't look like Whatcom County was going to get hit with flooding nearly as bad as some of the areas further down south. And unfortunately, that started to change like late yesterday. And we started to see some alarming trends, and especially as it related to what's known as the Sumas overflow, where the Nooksack River reaches a certain point, it goes a different direction and it heads off to Sumas and down into Abbotsford and into Canada. Caused a lot of damage, a lot of problems about 4 years ago when this happened in 2021. And so then related specifically really to the animal agriculture community is probably one of the most primary feed mills that we have really in all of Western Washington is located right there in Sumas, right on the Canadian border. And unfortunately, 4 years ago, they really got hammered with a flood, and they were not expecting the issues they've had. That mill's been there for, I think, like 60, 70 years, never ever had any issues like that. And 4 years ago, it flooded out and caused significant damage. And unfortunately, despite the fact that they made some strong efforts in the last 4 years, they put up dikes around the thing. They got these big, huge pumps, and they were feeling good. They closed their mill down around 9 o'clock this morning, and we're ready to go. That's right as the flood water started heading into Sumas. Despite all of their efforts, about three hours later, the mill was inundated. They lost the war. Water was coming in underneath the dikes, and they could not keep up. And unfortunately, their mill is completely flooded again. And we don't know the cause of the damage yet, but I imagine with all the electrical, pumps and huge electronics related to their room and their feed mixing, this is not a good development. It's probably going to be a significant blow. What makes it an even bigger blow, Dylan, is that 4 years ago, there was still at least one other mill here in Whatcom County that was operational, in the Cargill mill in Ferndale, and 2 years ago, that mill also got closed down and has been completely disassembled. So there is really very little that we can do to mitigate that damage, which, boy, the cost could be just immeasurable for our farms.
And not just here in Whatcom County either, Fred. And I want to bring into the conversation as well right now, joining us from Southwest Washington, down in the Alma area with the Washington State Dairy Federation. Jay Gordon is joining us this hour as well. Jay, explain a little bit more the significance of this EPL feed mill. Someone may think that this is just a Whatcom County issue. This is all over the state and beyond. What's this going to mean with this feed mill going down?
Well, it's my understanding this feed mill is obviously it's one of the biggest ones left in Western Washington. We certainly, we're sad to see Cargill leave the west side of the state. They've got a plant over on the east side. EPL has a plant on the east side, but really now all of a sudden we've got farms that, not only part of the issue is you've got farms that need feed, but you've also got farms that probably have feed that's getting flooded as we speak. So if they've got feed in the bunks or feed in a barn and the barn's gone underwater, that feed's now essentially moldy, rotten compost. And so now all of a sudden you got farms that need to figure out, how do you feed the cows? How do you take care of your calves? Where do you get your feed from? And we've been reaching out. I know the director of agriculture, Derek Sanderson, and his team have been reaching out to see if there's some added capacity for milling, especially on the east side of Washington, even down into Hermiston, so that we can replace that ability to have feed, all the way up into Whatcom and Skagit County, maybe from the east side.
Now, we did this whole drill, as Fred was just talking about, 4 years ago.
Yep.
And here we go again. But as Fred was just mentioning, it's even worse now because we don't have the redundancy of having that Cargill mill here locally that we used to have as well. What's that going to mean? Where's this feed gonna come from?
Like I said, I've been on a number of text messages and conversations with the Department of Ag, Derek Sanderson and his team, Amber Idle, who lives right there in Whatcom and Everson, the state veterinarian, trying to identify additional capacity. And ironically, there's a feed mill down here in Southwest Washington that supplies chickens, but the chicken plant that produces chickens, takes chickens to being poultry and meat. It was flooded, and so it's down. So they've got to produce more chicken feed for chickens. They weren't expecting to be anything except a consumer product at Costco. So we're looking around trying to find where can we. I mean, this is really a scramble drill, and all the way up to the director of ag. Is trying to, Fred and the director are trying to find, is there something in British Columbia? Is there something on the east side of the state that we can make up for the loss of this capacity?
This is a really bad situation. And last time this happened, the effects were felt for months afterwards, right? Because of the animal health implications of the change as well.
Yeah, I mean, EPL's mill is a state-of-the-art mill that provides really high quality rations for a lot of the farms on the west side of the state. We have a small mill down in Skagit that supplies a lot of the organic dairies, and they're very talented. They're in Conway. But EPL provides really that kind of quality nutrition for our dairies across the west side of the state. And to lose that capacity, certainly you can grind up corn or grind up grain and give an animal something to feed, but to be able to make sure that they've got a quality appropriate ration and diet to support their health, this one's going to hurt for a while until EPL can get back up to speed.
And
That may sound strange to some people, but our farmers really, I mean, they have very, very specific needs for their ration for their cows on their farm, based on, are they growing grass, growing alfalfa, growing corn silage? And then really these very technical mills be able to provide that kind of nutrition to make up for those differences on different farms, based on what those farms can grow and prefer to grow and have available to grow for kind of their basic nutrition for the cows, but EPL provides that quality that, oh my gosh, this is gonna hurt.
And all because of floodwaters from the Nooksack River having this impact on communities all over Washington State. Again, talking there with Jay Gordon with the Washington State Dairy Federation. Fred Likkel is here with us as well. And Fred, you many moons ago, in a former life, were a feed salesman yourself. When
Yes, I
it was
was.
Ferndale Grain back in the day.
No,
What?
I was at EPL.
Or
I was at Ellenbach.
you were at Ellenbach. That's when it was.
Yes.
Why
Which
did I
became
have that
EPL.
wrong? You're
Yep.
exactly right. And talk about being on the ground then for, Jason Hoekstra and the whole team at EPL, the salesmen, the staff, the crew. You know that world. What are they going through right now? Or do they just have to basically sit back and, I want to say watch it burn. It's not burning. I don't want to create alarm, but just what are they going through? What are they trying to figure out right now?
Well, right now, and following up on what Jay said, he's absolutely correct. Nowadays, I only half jokingly say a lot of times farmers are better nutritionists for their animals than they are for themselves. Right? I mean, those rations are, really fine tuned, and now you've got animals that in many cases have been stressed, even needing more, even that nutrition even better, and it may be that they get kicked off to the side. So that's really a sad spot to be. So what is the EPL mill doing right now? Well, they're probably doing a combination of things. One, they're scrambling. As Jay had said, they're going to be wanting to take care of their customers as best they can. So I'm sure that they are connecting with others, these other mills that, as Jay has talked about. And then they're also doing, the second scramble is what's wrong, how's our mill going to look? And right now, the sad part of that is there's 5 to 6 feet of water sitting in that mill. And it's probably going to take a couple of days, I would guess, before they're even going to be able to get in there to be able to see what the damage is. There's a lot of motors in there. There's a tremendous amount of complicated electrical equipment. Their electrical box, in essence, electrical room, was unfortunately on the ground floor. So it gets flooded out. I know last time 4 years ago, it was a scramble to find parts. And I mean, they were putting people on planes to fly complicated pieces from the East Coast over here. And it was a bit of chaos. The other thing that becomes chaotic for them is they need to be bringing in feed to manufacture this. And one of those difficulties with that is that, hey, listen, that comes in on the rail yard. Well, guess who also most likely got damaged? 4 years ago, the whole railroad system got damaged hugely. So they were also looking at scrambling to find trucks who could bring feed up here. It was a mess. I was really impressed with how we had a large crew of folks that worked together, EPL especially, to get it figured out. But it's not easy. It's not easy. And the sad part is, to a small extent, Dillon, this was a little bit preventable. And I don't know if we have time to talk about that, but that's...
And yeah, I do want to get into that if we have time, but ultimately this mill is flooded out, but the flood impacts are all over the state, and even some of the places that could be backups could be having flooding impacts. For instance, down in Skagit County, I was overhearing you talk earlier with Jay about, the Conway feed mill. Well, they have that. Well, they're close to the river down there as well. We do have, I have Jason Vander Kooy coming on with us now as well, a dairy farmer, Harmony Dairy, down in the Mount Vernon area. He's also connected with the diking districts and a lot of other things, the fire department down there. He's been in the thick of this now for a couple of days already, even just preparing for this historic event. Jason, what is the latest? What is the situation down there, first for your farm and then for the larger community in Skagit?
Well, Dillon, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Oh, shoot, my lights. I'm in my pickup along the river. So now I'm in the dark and I don't know where I put my keys. Yeah, first of all, talking about grain, that was the first call we got. And, our grains come from Eastern Washington now because of this. So that that's
Because
and
of
then
4
now
years
all the
ago.
roads, yeah, and they're having trouble time getting to us because all the roads are closed. But here in Skagit, we've had, I know of 4 or 5 dairy farms that moved their cows to higher ground that are in the real low areas. We have one farm in a low area, but for right now we're holding still. They have dropped the projected crest slightly, and I think right now it's at a manageable level. We do now have water going over the levee at in between Burlington and Cedar that just happened about an hour ago, and that will. There's no dairies in that immediate area, but that will be a big problem for those people in that area. No, this is it's a big deal. We're going to be right to the top of our levees tomorrow morning. So tonight, I'm not going to bed. We got patrols out. We're going to be watching everything, looking for leakage, seepage, any weak points. Thankfully, we've had the time to put all of our precautionary measures in place. So we're feeling good about that. But now it's just, let's see how our system holds up. And we've got in our 8.5 miles of dike in my area, we've got 4 patrols plus me and 2 other commissioners and others, the fire department and everything. We'll be up all night and we'll see what happens in the morning.
Are you worried?
Because I was more worried yesterday. I'm feeling a little better today, but things can change very quickly. But overall, I'm feeling all right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I want to
if we can get by till 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'll be fine. Yep.
Jason Vander Kooy down in Skagit County, Harmony Dairy. Thank you for that update. We appreciate it. Also, I want to go back. Jay Gordon's still with us with the Washington State Dairy Federation. As I mentioned earlier, you're based down in Southwest Washington. What's the flood situation been down there? We know it's bad in Whatcom. It's bad in Skagit. I've seen the videos out of Snohomish that have looked quite bad as well already for a day or two. There's still Squamish and other rivers down there. What are you guys experiencing in your area?
We got hit a little earlier than you guys did Sunday night, Monday. My forecast at my farm was for about 8 to 9 inches of rain from Sunday to now. It just created a flood that, we always tease. It's a flood that keeps the neighbors away. It's enough water to make sure nobody builds a housing development down in our valley where our farmland is.
Keeps the Californians from wanting to move in.
Absolutely, you want to keep those people, send
Sorry,
them to high
Californians.
ground. Sorry, send them to high ground so they can watch the flood. We did do some work with the state patrol on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. A dairy farm up the Cowlitz. Cowlitz was hit pretty hard. The farms were high and dry, but they couldn't get milk trucks in. They couldn't get feed trucks in. I know that farm is still waiting for the water to drop a little bit there. That farmer had a really interesting observation. He said, if it had been colder, down in the 40s or 50, low 50s, there had been snow in the mountains, then we could have handled this water. But Monday, when I talked to him, he was at 58 degrees. So snow level was 7, 8, 9,000 feet. There was no snow falling. It was all rain and it was all running off. And he said, we really count on the temperature being colder. And, this Pineapple Express was pretty warm. I've certainly seen it at my farm. It has almost been, shirt sleeve weather warm. It's really uncanny. And I went, I hadn't thought of that we as farmers and folks count on really snow falling in the hills in December, right? That's not what happened. This thing came straight up out of Hawaii with a suntan and shorts and flip flops and hit us hard. And I'm a little worried that maybe we've got another one coming. I'm looking at the next hydrograph on the Chehalis and a number of valleys, and it looks like maybe next week late we've got another double tap coming. So, all of us, we're going to get through this one, but I was really concerned seeing that we've got another batch of the Pineapple Express coming. So right now, Southwest Washington's doing good. Friends of mine over on Eastern Washington say, quit wringing the water out and send us some water. We're dry over here. And it's like, God, I'd love to. So, I'm sure Jason, everybody else would too. It's like,
Yeah.
take the water to the east side because we don't want it anymore.
Jason, with all of your connections, bringing Jason Vander Kooy back in down in Skagit County, have you been seeing these forecasts with your connections again with the fire department down there, with the diking district and other public officials? I know you posted a picture earlier of the National Guard there helping fill sandbags to help people there in Skagit County. Are you hearing anything about this forecast of maybe another round ahead? I mean, it's conjecture at this point, but still, it's worth talking about.
No, there's definitely going to be another system hitting us. We just don't know the strength or the exact location where it's going to hit. I mean, that's typical for this time of year. We'll get 2 or 3 these atmospheric rivers hitting us at this time of year, but they're so unpredictable and they're so narrow. It's not like, so getting hit twice is hit twice in 1 year. That's, it's pretty odd, but that happened in 1990, if we recall. And December 5, Fryland broke, and then exactly 2 weeks later, it broke again, and that was where we had back-to-back direct hits. So it can happen when it's here, or the hail. That's something we got to always pay attention to, and it's just the problem is they're so unpredictable until the rain starts falling. And that happened this time around. We just didn't know until all of a sudden, yeah, it's hitting right here. And a difference of even 20 to 40 miles north or south can depend where it hits. Skagit, Nooksack, Snohomish, whatever. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Jason Vander Kooy, stay safe down there in Skagit County, and thank you for those updates. Again, talking about this breaking information, this afternoon we got word that floodwaters in Sumas, Washington, and we can get into a little bit about how they get there. Sumas is not on the Nooksack River, but how this all happened. The floodwaters did, as we understand, inundate the EPL feed mill, which is a major regional feed mill supplying feed for thousands of farms all over Washington State and beyond. Fred Likkel, still with us as well, Executive Director with Whatcom Family Farmers. Fred, talk about, again, this feed mill shut down. They had to rescue their staff out of there by boat because they had built walls and had pumps ready, and they were trying to basically fight the flood off.
That is correct. Yeah, the last few people that were there, desperately trying to hold it off, and it just, they lost the fight, and so the last few, as I was told, had to actually be rescued by boat because the water around there is several feet deep. You're not gonna walk out of that one for sure.
Well, they got burned by this flood 4 years ago, the 2021 flood, which at the time, this is a 100-year plus flood, and hopefully nothing quite like this happens again. Now, whether this flood is exactly like that or not, I mean, we have days, weeks, months to hash that out and see what really happened. But this is pretty bad as well. And they didn't want this to happen again after, 4 years ago, and that mill having a lot of its electronics fried, a lot of its equipment damaged in the flood, all of the problems that went with that. And so describe a little bit what you know. You were talking with Jason Hoekstra with EPL Feed. He's the CEO there. Talk about all the work that they had done, or at least what he told you, and he was telling you about this ahead of time, right?
Oh yeah, Jason was he's not happy. And there's a lot of people, not just there, not just related to agriculture as well, but you look at these communities of Sumas and Everson and Nooksack, and I'm sure there's others as well that are going, we just got hit with this 4 years ago. Why in the world are we dealing with this again? And, this time they'd even done some preparing, I think I said that before, but they had put up dikes, berms around the facility that had not been there before. and they had these 2 huge pumps in there, and they really felt like they had prepared. And he said, we spent a lot of money getting this ready, and in the end, it meant virtually nothing. And the awkwardness for them, or the difficulty in this, is that this overflow only engages at certain times, in really bad floods. And the difficult part is, because the Nooksack River no longer gets cleaned out, it has much less capacity in it. There's a lot of, the gravel is building up for salmon habitat, and they're not allowed to touch it. But the result is there's a lot less capacity. So what happens is, when there's a lot less capacity, there's a lot bigger chance of that water flowing over and flowing to the Sumas. So to Sumas and Abbotsford in Canada. And I don't remember off the top, Dylan, maybe you remember, but the damages last time were absolutely astounding. Wasn't Canada close to $1 billion? I think it was. If I remember right.
Over $1 billion, depending on whose estimate you heard from, and those folks up north of the line are understandably furious about this. They're saying, keep your water to yourself. Fred, we didn't have time to talk about this ahead of time, but I know there was, after that event in 2021, some kind of berm built there near the border. Have you heard anything about that, and how that may have changed the dynamic of the floodwater on our side of the border in Sumas?
No, they talked about a berm along the border, but that didn't go through. There was a berm put up to protect one of the that small town right there. But no, the water is still flowing that way. And I have not received any updates as of yet how Canada is handling the water there. I did hear rumors that they had one of their own dikes break on the Fraser River. So that's always a danger too, because then you'd have water coming basically 2 ways, coming at each other. Who knows what happens when that's there. But
the problem there, and you can add to this as well, but the problem is they have a low area that used to be a lake. It's not a lake anymore, and hasn't been since, I believe, the 1920s, when they set up an elaborate system to keep the water out of there, to pump it out of there. There's a huge pump station that keeps it dry in events like this. But when water comes from our direction, their pumps aren't set up to keep that water out, and that lake starts to fill back in, essentially, is what's happening north of the border. We haven't heard reports of how bad things are up there, but they have a lot of farms in harm's way up there, even more than the farms that are being inundated here in Whatcom County and in Skagit County, et cetera, with this event right now.
Oh, that's right. I mean, Canada, they have that whole area, the old Sumas Lake there, is a very rich agriculture area. And it is a pretty low-lying area. Big chunk of it is even below sea level. So yes, the water flows that way, whether it's coming from our direction or if the Fraser River overflows. So yes, they're very much in danger, and they have pumps that will go either way, but the pumps couldn't keep up. And the sad part, I think, for them as well as for us, is that government ended up really not doing anything. In the last 4 years, there was a lot of talk. There's been a lot of meetings, but in the end, there really very little has been done in terms of, looking at a larger picture. There is some discussion about, well, we just need to widen the river. But I think, in the meantime, others, these cities are saying, look, you need to protect us now. And just because you widen the river, it's not going to make a difference. Dylan, people are angry out there, and they have a right to be.
What needs to happen here? And I want to bring in kind of an outside of Whatcom County perspective as well. Jay Gordon has been with us this evening talking about this breaking news about the EPL feed mill. If you're just joining us, the EPL feed mill, it's a big feed mill, a regional supplier of animal feed all over Washington State and beyond. Has been inundated with floodwaters amongst many homes, many businesses, and a lot of other people that are hurting in Sumas. But this is a huge impact for us in the farming community. That's why we're talking about it here on Save Family Farming Live tonight, just to let people know what's going on. A lot of farmers probably aren't even aware yet that this has gone on, and there may be a question for where their feed will be coming from in the coming weeks. But Jay, give us the outside of Whatcom County perspective. A lot of us here in Whatcom County have had a lot of fiery conversations, shall we say, about this issue and whether or not things should be done, shouldn't be done, what's going on. What's your perspective? You've followed these kinds of issues. You guys have dealt with these types of issues with streams and what to do about them down in your neck of the woods. Also, as policy director and your involvement in Olympia, what's your take from where you stand on what's really going on with the Nooksack River and what needs to be done here?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Dylan. I've been involved in trying to figure out what to do about flooding in the Chehalis since the 2007 event. My family's been on my farm since the mid 1800s. And really the 90, 91, 96, '07 floods, really all of a sudden a bunch of us farmers said, hey, what's going on? This is different. We're now getting 100-year floods in the Chehalis every 6, 7 years. And so there's been a lot of tribal and farmer community conversations for 10, 15 years. I give Governor Gregoire a lot of credit for bringing together a lot of conversations about really the why and what's different and what's happening. And I've certainly been aware, I represent a lot of dairy farmers in your valley. And at least in the Chehalis and the Yakima over on the Olympic Peninsula, a number of farms and especially tribes have also said, what are we doing here? This is different. This is not, your standard run of the mill flood that just, gets the fields wet and we are seeing this. I mean, to have a catastrophic flood in Sumas in 21 and another one now is similar to what we've had in the Chehalis. And so, I think we need to back up a little bit and go, okay, what are we going to do? And so we've had it, not to ramble a little bit, Dylan, and stop me if I if I get too far down the rabbit trail. We've had some great partnerships over in the Dungeness between the Jamestown Squam tribe and the irrigation districts going, how do we control these floodwaters and save them for irrigation or use them for fish? We got plenty of water in the winter, and our fish are now suffering because of low flows in the summer. You have the Yakima Nation and the irrigation districts in Yakima having those conversations and really talking about building flood control dams that also store water for fish. The Umatilla tribe and the farmers down in the Walla Walla for years have been talking, and my personal involvement is talking to the Chehalis tribe and the Quinault Nation and the farmers. What do we do with a little too much blessing from God, right? Little too much rainfall,
Yeah.
or a lot as we are dealing with it today. Can we store that? Can we use that for irrigation during droughts or to move fish and salmon so that they survive? The Nooksack is, I'll be honest, a little frustrating. I think you guys have an opportunity to look at, with the tribes and the farmers and the community of, okay, we're getting a lot of water. We're having to deal with it and flooding. What do we have to do different as humans for our fish, for our farms to produce food? I certainly have been an advocate to support some kind of a collaborative conversation in the Whatcom. That sounds like fluff in the middle of a crisis.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that, but at what point do we stop and go, Houston, we got a problem, to quote the, Apollo 13.
Yep.
And it's a bigger problem that we all need to sit down and go, how do we fix that? 10, 15 years I've been working on that in the Chehalis. It's frustrating, it's long, it's deliberative, it's too slow in a crisis like this. But, there'd be my kind of sales pitch for, can't we just think about, wow, we've got a lot of water in the winter, and to quote a former chair of the Chehalis tribe, that's actually a good thing if we can figure out what to do with that water,
Yeah.
right?
No kidding.
We don't want it on the tribal reservation. We don't want it on the casino. We don't want it in our barns. And can we save that, to help our fish in August, September, and October? And I think those conversations, my hope would be for Whatcom that those conversations maybe start anew again. And that's an unpaid advertisement
Yeah.
and
Well, and it's,
a
yeah.
cheerleader for you guys.
Well, and especially now that it feels kind of like two in a row. It's not back-to-back years, but these floods now are, and they aren't exactly the same. I'm hoping at the end of the day, the overall impact won't be as great from this one, even though it sounds like, for instance, in the city of Everson, the homes, the residents there, the impact may be worse, according to the mayor of Everson and the things he's been posting online today. So it remains to be seen how this shakes out. But look at the impact. Now, as we're talking about this, I mean, we're talking about the farming community impact. Farms struggling right now already, and then going into this, getting hammered by this situation. Now with this feed mill being inundated and a question mark about where they're going to be getting their feed, the whole community is going to have to band together to deal with this issue.
Yes.
We've got towns underwater, homes being destroyed right now. Hopefully no one has been injured or lives lost. Last time this happened in 2021, a person did die here in Whatcom County. So hopefully everyone is being safe, but this is a dangerous situation. I'm bringing Fred Likkel into this conversation, this part of the conversation as well. At what point do we start to deal with the elephant in the room? And this becomes more of a thing, especially now with these back-to-back. It's not an outlier. Is this the new normal? And if it is, people are not gonna stand for this. Even just to bounce off of some of Jay's comments here, Fred, what can we do? We've got to do something different.
Well, the danger has always been, I've been involved in these flooding discussions for a long time, is there's a lot of talk, and we model things and we look at things and we check, but so often the actual doing things takes so long and gets so caught up in bureaucracy. And it feels sometimes like it's just safer to say, well, let's study the problem instead of actually doing something. And what I really hope we get to a place now, as we face these crises and as we see people who are firsthand seriously struggling, lives even at risk. I've heard of multiple places where people were rescued, homes, and your entire person just basically being destroyed without in part because of some government inaction. That we see some compassion and we see some encouragement and some action to actually get to saying, how can we do some things? How can we look at it? And yeah. I know the farmers have talked about, look, we're willing to step up to the table and say, how can we be flexible on this stuff? We're standing there ready to talk, but we actually need to see it happen. Right? Enough talk, more action.
What did the talk between 2021 and now do for us? And it's hard to see if there was much of anything. Just to jump to the earlier we were talking about, and again, we've been reporting here tonight. If you're just joining us, I'm Dillon Honcoop with Save Family Farming, reporting on this feed mill in Sumas, Washington, that has been inundated by floodwaters, creating, and this hasn't even been felt yet, but it will be felt for weeks and months to come, affecting farms, thousands of farms all over the state, all over the region that rely on this to supply their feed for their animals, and has been taken offline, and certainly will be some time before it's able to be brought back online, at least if the damage there is anywhere in line with what happened in 2021. We're talking about the fact that, different than for Jay down in the Chehalis area that he has experience with, this is an international issue here because of Canada being involved. We've been talking about, we don't know exactly right now with this flood what the impacts in Canada have been, other than we are hearing, and we're just seeing in the comments now. And I'm going to see if we can bring this on here. Yeah, Kristen Dahl is watching, or has been watching on Facebook, saying that there is no water coming over the land in the Sumas Prairie Lake bottom yet. The dike is still holding. Ditches and some fields are full from rainwater, as we're experiencing down here. She's also talking about West Sumas Prairie is getting some water from us here in Washington State. So it is moving that way. Certainly it doesn't sound like it's the crisis that it turned into, but that takes time too, right, friend? We saw this river high last night, and even this morning we were sharing photos back and forth the webcams at 8 o'clock in the morning, Cherry Street down the heart of Sumas was dry. And within an hour, those floodwaters suddenly had made their way, and it takes a few hours from where they spill over out of the Nooksack River in Everson to make it all the way up north to Sumas, because water goes downhill, and that's the way they're headed. I don't know how many more hours it is for them to make it into the heart of the Sumas Prairie up there in BC, but that's how these things unfold, and it's unfolding as we speak.
No, you're absolutely right, and it is a kind of it is fascinating in almost a horror kind of way, right, on how this works. Okay, so the river started going over in Everson yesterday evening, if I remember correctly, like probably around this time. And yet this morning, you know, as you and I were watching, Dillon, at 8 o'clock, the streets in Sumas were showing dry and clear, and it wasn't raining. And you're like, oh, are they going to be okay? And then you start getting a couple phone calls. Like I got the phone call from Jason at EPL. Well, we're going to shut the mill down. It's coming our way. And then you look at that same camera at 9 o'clock and you start to see the water coming into the street. And an hour later, remember there was a propane tank sitting here, and our propane tank is almost completely underwater. It is, like I said, almost kind of, horror how that can happen so fast. You know, we have, you and I have a colleague and friend who lives there in the Sumas area who is in the process of selling her house, and sent us a picture of her home, which has been raised 6 feet and is reasonably close to the Canadian border, with about 5.5 or more feet of water, right up to the top of her steps, where it had been completely dry, 3 hours before. So it's, and again, all this time it's not raining, right, Dillon? I mean, it stopped raining last night at probably 11, 12 o'clock. And yet here comes the water. That's how those things work. All we can really hope is that continues to go down. I know it's starting to go down in Everson. I've heard that maybe it's starting to go down or leveled off, certainly in Sumas. Although I know further down the Nooksack, Ferndale has yet to see a crest. And I see you've got Jason coming on too, who I'm sure he can talk about how those crests work for them too.
Yeah, Jason, share a little bit about, the slow developing crisis that is a flood and how that's going down there. I know you gave us a bit of a report earlier. What's still ahead for you folks there in Skagit? This is still ongoing. We haven't seen the end of it yet, right?
No. Concrete crested this morning at 10 a.m. So we're about, it depends, there's variables, but we're between 18 and 22 hours after concrete's crest. So that means we're going to crest tomorrow morning, probably about when daylight shows up, that 7 o'clock in the morning time frame. So that's kind of nice. We know it's coming our way. And it gives us time to prepare. But yeah, we got, some areas where we have 4.5 feet left of freeboard on our dikes. So yeah, there's still worry, but we're going to be right up to the edge. That's my gut feeling.
Is there concern about downtown Mount Vernon right now?
No, I think the biggest concern right now is between Cedar Woolley and Burlington. Okay. That right now, that's they're getting water right now.
Earlier, you talked about farms that had been moving animals. And that's a huge operation to pull that together. I know we had photos last night of people with trailers and trucks to be able to do that. Who were staging. They were prepared to help out with that. Once it gets to a certain point, though, it's too late, right? And you can get caught. Yeah.
So that was, the predictions we had 2 days ago. We could not handle that. There's just no way. So that put people, hey, we just got to get ahead of the game because, moving animals, especially a dairy farm, there's a lot of moving parts to that. Not just moving them, but you got to find a place where you can still milk them, feed them, take care of them. So it's a huge deal. So we know of several dairy farms here that have moved their animals. And thankfully, there was a couple dairies that just recently sold out that we're still able to fire up. But
Hmm.
that's a big deal. Yeah, especially this time in the where we're at right now with dairy. It's not good.
Well, and in the dairy community, we talk often about keeping cows healthy and happy. They don't
Yeah,
like this kind of stuff. They just want to chill.
no,
They want to chew their cud, and we're all about that. Keeping them as comfortable and as happy and as well fed as possible. Nobody's happy in this kind of situation. It's uncomfortable for all of us, including these cows who then have to get,
yeah,
loaded onto a trailer and taken to a different barn. They're not in their normal place. They may not be getting, their normal mix of food, even though they're probably still being fed as well as possible. All these kinds of things can then have an impact on how those cows are producing down the road. And this impact, even once everything is quote unquote back to normal, can still be felt for a long time, right?
yes. It'll take a whole lactation of a cow to recover. Definitely. Yeah,
What,
no,
what,
it's. Oh, go ahead.
just thinking about that because I often admit I'm not a cow guy
Yes.
myself. So I hear about these things. I understand these things. My grandpa was a cow guy, so he would talk about this kind of stuff, but just remembering some of those things and trying to learn. And that's why I ask some of the dumb questions sometimes, what does it take to make sure cows are as well taken care of as possible, even in the midst of, putting them on a trailer, taking them for a vacation to a different farm for a week. And thank goodness that's even available and has been possible for these folks that had to move. But then having to load them up and bring them back home, and that's a lot of chaos. And what do you do to try to keep things as smooth and as calm as possible in the midst of that chaos?
Yeah. The number one priority is to keep them alive and healthy and safe. And then to get them milked. That's the thing. If we got to get them to a place where we can, yeah, do those things. But yeah, it's a huge financial hit. Obviously, it takes a full lactation for that cow to recover. This is not easy on the cow either. So this is just this is going to hit some farmers real hard, very hard.
At a time when things already are
Yeah.
incredibly tight, with a lot of
Yes.
market pressures,
But
low prices, prices have come back down, struggles on a variety of fronts that we've talked about in other venues before, and then to have this thrown on top of it, it could be a double, triple, quadruple whammy for some
yeah,
farms, right?
for sure. No. Oh, right.
Bringing Fred into the conversation as well. And thank you, Jason Vander Kooy, Harmony Dairy down there, a board member of Safe Family Farming, as well as involved with the fire department down there, a volunteer firefighter. He's on the diking districts down there, which is obviously very important right now. Fred Likkel is with us, executive director of Safe Family Farming. Again, we started this conversation talking about the impact of this EPL feed mill in Sumas that's now been inundated with water and will be shut down for the foreseeable future because of this, and sharing some of those details, this kind of breaking tidbit that will have an impact for a long time with the farming community. Anything that you can add there to what Jason was saying, about keeping cows healthy and happy in the midst of all of this, and managing a crisis like this as people are having to do right now.
Sure. I appreciated what Jason had to say about that. And I think that comment of there's a lot of moving parts is something that's really important here. This isn't just a matter of picking up an animal and depositing them somewhere else and maybe bringing them a little hay and saying, nice bossy, all's good. We started this conversation out, I think, with discussing how important a really super balanced ration is for a dairy cow. Well, yeah, and so those dairy farms are set up. They bring that grain in. They have their own feed there that has been balanced for their ration. Then you've also got the milking parlor that is set up very specifically for their own system. You pick that up and you move that. you're hugely changing what this farm looks like, and you're causing a lot of chaos. And I know there's been some criticism, and sometimes I can understand it. Well, why didn't that guy move those cows before? Well, that's exactly why. I talked to a guy today who right now his cows are standing, it sounds like, in a foot or so of water. They can't lay down for about the last 12 to 15 hours. But he said, okay, if I move them, first you have to find a place. Then a lot of times that place has been shut down. So you have to put a whole new milking parlor up. It takes a huge amount of money to get that up and going. Then you have to be worried about moving feed and how is that going to look? And then you got to move those animals there. Oh, another one is bedding. Bedding can be a very expensive thing, whether it be sawdust or whatever it might be. Okay, all of that needs to be set up to move those cows there. And then you also start looking at it going, okay, sometimes, as Jason had mentioned, you're looking at a forecast and going, is it going to affect my farm or not? What's going to happen here? Am I going to have to move these 1,000 cows or 200 cows or whatever it might be? That's a lot of work. So sometimes you go, I'm going to play this and see how it works out, because boy, otherwise and with the tight margins they have, that's the kind of thing that can really sink somebody. It really can. So there aren't easy answers to this. There aren't any easy solutions to a situation like this.
Do you think farms will go out of business as a result of what happened here in Whatcom County, as a result of what's happening with feed, as a result of what's happening in Skagit or Snohomish or other places as well?
I think, Dillon, the important thing to remember on this is that all of us deal with stress, and you get stress loaded up, and dairy has not been an easy thing to be in for the last number of years. It's very much a least cost. He who produces it the cheapest wins. That's not easy to do here in Western Washington. They're already facing a lot of stresses. This can be the kind of thing that emotionally a lot of times there can be government bailouts and other things that can help you out with it, but you just kind of get to a point where you go, I can't deal with this stress anymore. I just can't do it. And so, yeah, it would not shock me. We've had it happen before where this kind of thing is what kicks people out. They say, I'm done. And it may not necessarily be because financially I'm done. It's because emotionally I'm done. I'm out.
Again, we were watching this flood coming. The forecast, atmospheric rivers lined up, not just one, but multiple, back to back, dumped all this rain on us. We were watching the river forecast. How high is the river going to go? And at first it looked like it wasn't going to be too major on the Nooksack. It looked like it was going to be terrible on the Skagit. And glad to hear tonight from Jason that we heard from just a few moments ago, live from the banks of the Skagit River, that it is bad down there, but it's not as bad as the devastating forecast that we had been seeing earlier. But here we are in a situation where it ended up being worse than we expected in Whatcom County on the Nooksack River. That water ended up doing exactly what we were worried could happen. It came over the edge of the river, over the levees, and started heading north towards Sumas, something that we hadn't seen until 2021. We hadn't seen since 1990. And now it's happened 4 years again later, sending water to Sumas. It's inundated this feed plant. It's put a lot of, people's lives in total chaos, with homes that have been flooded, so many problems that have been caused, problems as well for the farming community that we've just been talking about. Fred, share just a little bit again what's happening right now, and I expect we'll continue to update folks here as we get more information in the coming days about what's happening with this plant, with how folks around the state are going to be getting feed, folks that relied on this plant, this EPL plant that's now offline and has been inundated with water. This is all hands on deck to try to figure out how to make food for animals happen, right? You've been in touch, I know, with WSDA. We had Jay Gordon on earlier. I know he's helping coordinate. What do we know right now about the effort to deal with this?
Sure. Yes. To recap what we had talked about earlier, there is really one primary major feed producing plant, produces grain for animals out there. In really on the West Coast, there's some smaller ones, but one that's far and away the biggest. and that is named EPL Feed Mills over in Sumas. And they were inundated with floodwaters 4 years ago. It really caused a lot of damage, and caused a lot of chaos in agriculture. They made some efforts over these last 4 years. They thought they were really good faith efforts to try and protect themselves, and I think they were. They built up some big berms. They brought in a couple of big pumps. They were all ready to go. And as the water started coming their way, they saw it coming. They said, we're going to shut down our plant this morning. They shut it down. They sealed off their road where one area where water could come in. They were all ready to go. Despite that effort, within about 3 hours of the floodwaters hitting them, they became so completely inundated with water coming from underneath the berms and through the water that their pumps could not keep up. It overwhelmed the system, and they flooded their mill yet again. So that has shut down this mill. There's a lot of unknowns right now as to how long that's going to be. They're going to need to wait for those floodwaters to go down, which are probably about 5 to 6 feet high in that area right now. And they're going to have to wait until that goes down. It's probably actually more than that if I think about it. And then they're going to have to assess the damage. There's huge amount of electrical parts in this. You've got motors that are going to need to be worked on and replaced. This is going to be a real challenge.
But what is happening right now as far as the scramble to try to connect people with feed that relied on this mill? Share that before we run ourselves out of time here.
Sure.
I know last time this happened, the state veterinarian even was involved via WSDA, right? Dr. Amber Idle?
And she is as well right now. So yes, we are working very hard because obviously nutrition is very hard with animal health. And I would say that the encouraging part of this is that EPL itself recognized this as of 4 years ago and has made a lot of connections, and they're working very hard to take care of their customers too. It is a huge challenge, and that is why we're putting together a group to discuss this, come up with potential resources for both EPL and these farms who are going to be working very hard to make this work. But I don't want to underestimate the challenge because it is big. There's a lot of moving parts there. And so, yeah, they're going to be the other unknown that we don't know, Dillon, is how the railroad was affected by this, because a huge amount of their feed comes in by the rail. In 2021, large chunks of the train tracks were wiped out. That causes more problems because now everything needs to be trucked in. So there's some moving parts here that we don't know, that I would guess over the next 2 to 3 days we'll know a lot better. But right now, yeah, the warning signs are out there for sure.
I'm not sure if we have Jay Gordon with us. I'm curious what those kinds of conversations are looking like right now. Calls, and it looks like maybe Jay is busy at the moment, but what those conversations are like. You said a group is convening to discuss how do we address this as a farming community across Washington State. Sure. What is a group like that, just real quick, what is a group like that talking about? What kinds of things could happen?
Absolutely. Well, I can say, for instance, last time there were discussions with the border. Okay, if we can move feed across the border, can we drop some of those emergency type of issues to move things across? There was discussions with the state of can you lower some of the weight limit level, or raise the weight limit level so that we can haul more feed faster. They even brought the military into it last time a little bit. So discussions about how can we be more efficient, how can we not get government regulations in the way. Discussions with various trucking companies who, sometimes you see trucking companies that are going empty one way or the other. Hey, how can we work it out and manage it to bring in? And again, that can be, sometimes you have to relax some government regulations. Oh, another one would be on the amount of time. Remember that, a lot of these truckers are only allowed to drive, 8 hours a day? Okay, let's relax that, because if these folks are coming from Eastern Washington or all the way there, we can't just have somebody shut down when we have farmers that need feed. So working through a bunch of those things is,
well, it's an emergency. It's an emergency. I mean,
exactly.
We can't Just before we wrap here, one last time, Jason Vander Kooy down there in Skagit County. We're thinking about you guys because we know that things have to finish unfolding there. Really, here in Whatcom County, Fred, the full impacts of the amount of water moving down are probably just starting to be felt in the Ferndale area. You know, first Deming, then Everson and Nooksack, on toward Linden, where we are tonight, and then moving on toward Ferndale before they head out to the mouth of the river. Similar story that Jason has been talking about from Concrete all the way out to the Puget Sound, and this is still unfolding as we talk about it. People are still, and Fred, you're just talking about the scramble that will be going on in the coming hours and days as groups convene to try to deal with some of these things. And Jason, I wanted to thank you for your updates, and one last time, you're saying things are looking like they aren't going to be as bad as had been feared, but still not good down there in Skagit, right?
Yeah, we got 24 hours ago, and anything can happen. But I'm feeling fine, but that can change in 10 minutes. We do know water is going over the levee system between Cedarville and Burlington. That's kind of a huge effect on agriculture in that area. We're downriver of that, and we're still waiting for that wave of water to hit us. We're probably 4 or 5 hours downstream of them. So we're not out of the woods yet. I'm feeling better, but we got a ways to go. Yeah.
Well, and a lot of that is based on the forecast, which put the predicted levels of water multiple feet above all-time records.
Yes.
So anything less than that is welcome news, but that, like you said, doesn't mean you're out of the woods. Jason Vander Kooy down there, dairy farmer, firefighter, dike commissioner, etc. Many hats. Plus you've got a family to take care of as well. All of you stay safe down there, and thanks for being able to join us here tonight.
Thank you.
And Fred Likkel as well will continue to follow this issue, and we may be back again in the days to come with updates on what folks need to know. Probably some folks just finding out about this around the state, that things may be changing as far as where they source their feed, again, due to this feed mill going down in Sumas. A lot of other people with bigger fish to fry right now, though, too. People without homes to sleep in tonight, and trying to figure out if they have a home left. I know certainly in the city of Everson, parts of Nooksack, and I'm sure down there in Skagit County, I know in Snohomish County, et cetera, as well. Fred, thanks for the update on EPL, as well as the background on the flooding. Thanks for being here with us tonight to fill in what we know, at least at this time.
Thanks, Dillon.
And thank you all for being with us here tonight. And again, we'll keep you posted as we find out more. And so we're going to just wrap things up and make sure you're following us on Safe Family Farming on Facebook and Instagram, as well as X and Blue Sky and LinkedIn. And we'll be sharing important information and other interesting things to chew on, I'm sure, a lot as we go ahead. And again, if you're out there in the midst of this, our thoughts and prayers are with you. Stay safe. And thanks for tuning in for our conversation here tonight.